जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदामयं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा ललितकरुणाताण्डितं साद्वैतं स्वागतं परिजनासाहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपीशा गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Shashwat, for doing the for reciting the Manglacharan. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Amongst us, we have our Madan Gopal Prabhuji all the way from New Jersey. Prabhuji, Dandvat Pranam. Please accept humble obeisances from everybody from this group. Prabhuji, welcome. We are seeing you after a long time. Prabhuji, we are on chapter 8. And chapter 8 is called Attaining the Supreme. And today we are on text 1. So we will start chapter 8 today. Prabhuji, you lead and we will follow.
Okay, thank you. So I was thinking today we can do an overview of chapter 8. Maybe I'll go into chapter 8, verse 1 a little bit. But if I can provide a full overview, this way, as you're going through it, you can first be aware of the main message as you go through the details. I think that'll be very nice. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
The temple behind looks so beautiful.
Yeah, it's coming up. The construction is ongoing. Looking forward to opening it. Hopefully next year we'll be done with it. So the construction, yeah.
Wow.
Okay. So chapter 8. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please repeat. Om Namo
भगवते वासुदेवाय
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
So I'm going to speak from the super simplified version of the Gita, where we've kind of made the concepts, we've worded them so it's easy to see the flow. So Arjuna opens up this chapter with a bunch of questions, asking technical questions. Okay, so I'll just jump right into it and then we'll come back into the verse. Okay, so Arjuna says, you just mentioned spirit and soul and karma. These are technical terms that Krishna has been using in the previous chapters. What does each term really mean? Also, he mentioned the essential reality of every object, divinity, and effort. What are these concepts? He also mentioned that devoted souls attain the highest destination by being aware of you at the time of death. Can you explain this more thoroughly? So Krishna had touched upon these concepts. Arjuna wants some details. So Krishna quickly answers the first few very quickly in just a couple of verses. He says, look, spirit is that supreme indestructible energy. And soul, when I say soul, Atma, that is the inherent essence of what you are. You are the soul. And then he asks about karma. Karma is those actions that creates the causes behind every situation that comes into being, such as future birth. So that's important to understand. Anything we do that creates a future birth, that is called karma. And then what is the essential reality of every object that we see in the material world? It's going to disappear. That is the reality. Everything we see in this world, every object, is going to be gone. If not now, today, then tomorrow. And then what is the essential nature of all divinities, all divine things? That it is the original person. It comes from me, the divine, divinity. And the essence of all efforts is me, the soul of all souls. So then Krishna gives a summary of what these essences are. So then Arjuna asks, okay, yes, you mentioned that those who are devoted to you will attain you. How does that happen? If you can mute everyone, that'll be good. How does that happen? So Krishna explains, whatever state of mind you're in at the time of death, at the end of one lifetime, that determines the type of existence you attain in the next lifetime. So if your mind can you mute everyone else? Yeah, thank you. So whatever state of mind at the time of death, that determines existence in the next life. If your mind is fixed on me at the end of your life, you will attain my own nature without a doubt. Okay, very simple point. We kind of all know that. So Arjuna asked the question which a lot of other people ask. So if it's at the time of death that's important, can I think of anything and everything throughout my life? But if by chance I think of you at the time of death, isn't that okay? Is that even, is that the proper way to think of it? Krishna says that's impossible. Because at the moment of death, only spontaneous, unstoppable thoughts will fill your mind. Basically, Krishna is saying at the time of death, you won't be able to control your mind, honestly speaking. Only something that you're very used to thinking about, that comes to you very naturally. That's the first thing that comes to your mind. That's what's going to be in your mind. If you wish to remember me at that moment, you must practice remembering me throughout every moment of your life. That is the fact of what happens at death. We can't force ourselves at the time of death to think something that we're not used to thinking all the time. It doesn't work like that. Krishna says, enwrap your mind and intellect in me by living your life according to my instructions. Then you will attain me. Have no doubt about it. If you practice uniting your thoughts to me without wandering to other topics, your thoughts will carry you to me, the paramount divine person. This is key. We have to think of Krishna at the time of death. But it's not possible to think of Krishna at the time of death if we have not practiced thinking of Krishna all the time. And it is not possible to think of Krishna all the time unless we're living our life according to Krishna's instructions. Because whatever we do If you always keep in the back of mind, if I do it like this, Krishna will be pleased. If I do it this way, he will not be so pleased. If I do it like this, he'll be very happy. He'll give me blessings, or I will be able to serve him nicely. So we're always thinking what will please him, what will displease him. Do things that will please him, avoid things that displease him. This way, every action that we do, if it's guided by Krishna's instructions, then the thought of Krishna will always be there at the back of the mind, no matter what we are doing with our lives. Whether it is career centered, whether it is relationship centered, whether it is yoga centered, doesn't matter. If it is going through the lens of what Krishna will be pleased or not, then at the time of death, it'll be very easy to think of Krishna. That is the essence of instruction right here. So then Arjuna says, how should I practice thinking about you if I should think of you all the time? So then he said, think of me like this. Think of these amazing qualities of this paramount person, this supreme personality of Godhead, that's me. These are the qualities. Always be thinking like this. He is ingenious. He is ancient, the oldest of the old. He is the leader of all. Subtler than the subatomic particles. That means he's the tiniest in every atom also. The maintainer of everyone, amazingly beautiful, radiant like the sun, and beyond all darkness. These are the things that you should capture your imagination. Invest the power from your breathing into the area. Now he's talking about like how to breathe and do yogic meditation to focus better. Of your eyebrows, and keep this divine contemplation in your mind always up to the very end. This yogic meditation will be very powerful because it is empowered by devotion. It will take you to the paramount person. Okay, so a lot of details. So what is the essence of all these details? The essence, Krishna says, is you remember me with constant, undivided attention. If you do this, my friend, you will gain me quite easily. Attention is very important. What happens then? When you achieve me, you will never again achieve another birth in this house of suffering and impermanence. Your soul will blossom into the fullest perfection of topmost achievements. Okay, but what's wrong with taking another birth, honestly? I mean, if I take a birth in heaven, it's so beautiful up there, heavenly planets and all that. And Krishna says, all the heavens, heavenly planets, up to and including Brahma, is a place from which you must again return. It's a place of suffering. But when you come to me, Arjuna, my cousin, you will never return to this cycle of birth and death. That's the difference. All these heavenly planets, they're just temporary. It'll be gone in a second. But many people think that these heavens are eternal and that Brahma never dies. A lot of people think like that. You can see here, Indra is coming to the court of Lord Brahma, and he's like this incredible being who, we never hear of him dying really. He says maybe, some people may think that, but the wise, those who are really intelligent, they know that Brahma's day lasts for 1,000 eons, and so does his night. Eons refers to yuga cycles. 1,000 cycles of yugas is one day of his night, and then same way is his night. And his day begins, all the creatures of the world become manifest. When the night begins, they all dissolve and demanifest. And again they dissolve with his dusk and awaken with his dawn. Bhutva bhutva praliyate. They come and go into existence. Does he ever die, Lord Brahma? Krishna says, yes, he does. And with him the entire creation dissolves. But beyond Brahma and his destructible universe is an eternal, indestructible, non-material reality. As a spiritual world, it is never destroyed when everything else is annihilated. Okay, if it is beyond Brahma, then who is the Lord of that realm? Krishna says, that famous place, the imperishable, non-material, supreme destination from which no one departs, is my supreme abode. I am the Lord of that. It is my house. From my house, nobody leaves because it is permanent. Oh, how can I attain that? And Krishna says, that supreme person in his supreme abode is attained only by love. And not just any love, Arjuna, but pure love, without any ulterior or selfish motive. Selfless love, pure love, loving service. So what inspires such purity of love? undeviated to any other person or thing. So first you must understand that when you realize that the Supreme Person is within the core of everyone, permeating everything, how would it be possible for your love to be diverted to any other person or thing? When you actually see Krishna is everywhere, He's within everyone's heart. Your natural love in your heart will go to Krishna only, exclusively, because you realize Krishna is in everyone's heart. So can you say a little more about the destination from which no one strays and no one returns? So he talks about the bright path. The path which leads to the spiritual destination is bright. It takes one past the gods of fire, light, daytime, waxing moon, and the northerly sun. That path leads back. The path that leads backwards to the world, material world, is dark. So this bright path is positive, and a dark path. It comes from lunar heavens and takes one past the gods of smoke, night, the waning moon, and the southerly sun. There have always been these two paths for the departed soul, a bright one and a dark one. Bright path leads toward a spiritual goal from which there is no returning. The dark path takes one back to rebirth. So Arjuna says, yes, it seems a lot of details, many details. Krishna says, maybe, but the essence of all these details is this. Just try to unite your heart to mine. That is all you really need to do to be a yogi and attain the original paramount abode, surpassing all the best results obtainable on any path of philosophy, ritual, austerity, or charity. Basically, tie your heart to mine. And that is the end of chapter 8. Very short, brief summary, but you get an idea of what is being discussed. You get the essence, you get the idea, and the flow. Because I'm going to go back now to the verse number 1, so we can go into the details of it. Okay, I'm just going to recite it. 8.1. Arjuna uvacha kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottama adhibhutam cha kim proktam adhidevam kim uchyate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are fruitive activities? What is the material manifestation? What are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Purport. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjuna, beginning with what is Brahman. The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the supreme absolute truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority, able to give definitive answers. So this chapter, the purport ends over here, and this chapter is called what? Attaining the Supreme. Attaining the Supreme. And Krishna gives the biggest clue on attaining the Supreme. In text 5 and text 6, actually 5, 6, and 7, he focuses on that. He says that at the end of your life, when you leave your body remembering me alone, then you attain my nature. And text 6, he says, whatever, if you think of anything else, you'll attain that without fail. So basically, the concept of transmigration, the concept of our next destination is very clear. What do you think of at the time of death? is where you end up. Now, what we think of at time of death is not a random, spin of the roulette wheel. Randomly I happen to be thinking of that. No. At the time of death, it's a very hectic, chaotic time for most people, most of us, because death is, it's not like we all have practice in this lifetime going through death. We only have one shot at it. We've heard a lot about it, but it's the first time we're going to be doing it in this life. And it can be quite chaotic. It usually is very painful. And people around us also, if there are people around us, they're also panicking, or they're usually not in a good state of mind when that is happening. It's pretty serious, because there's no coming back. Everything we thought we are, everything we think we own, everything we consider our identity, all the people we consider our relatives and our friends, that everything is going to be severed. Our sense of self-worth, our sense of happiness, if it's wrapped around, usually it is wrapped around our identity as a body. So the time of death, it is very chaotic, very painful. A lot of times there's physical pain, but more than physical pain, there's that whole trauma and desperation, knowing that this is the end. I won't see all these people again. And it is very shaking. I mean, it shakes us. So what are the thoughts that will fill our mind in that chaotic, traumatic time? What are the thoughts? Basically, at that point, we have very little control of our thoughts. It's a very emotional time. Generally, when we are going through any kind of intense emotions, we don't have too much control over how our thought process is going to be going. So then what is it that makes it into the last few seconds or last few minutes of our mind? What is it that makes it into that screen, that TV screen of our mind in the last few minutes? What qualifies, which show, which scenes, which pictures are going to be projected on that screen? Those pictures which are very that appear very naturally and normally in our minds all the time, on a daily basis, multiple times a day, and that are associated with intense feelings, those are the pictures that make it. So if we are practiced in thinking of Krishna intensely enough and associating those with feelings of happy emotions, or even if we're going through some painful things in our life, but we have found ourselves turning to Krishna very deeply, even whether they're happy or unhappy, if we have brought Krishna in our heart in all of circumstances of our life, and we're used to doing it, and we're used to waking up chanting Krishna's name, trying to focus our mind on him, trying to understand his philosophy, trying to understand Bhagavad Gita, trying to understand his various pastimes, his leelas, trying to serve him in his deity form, trying to preach about him and share our understanding with others, then it strengthens and rivets the images of Krishna in our intelligence, in our mind. That is why the whole process of Krishna consciousness, as outlined by Srila Prabhupada, is very powerful. Because right first thing from the morning until last thing you do at night is centered around and saturated around the thoughts of the Supreme Lord, the appreciation of the Supreme Lord, and how much he's done for us, and how much we want to develop our love for him, and so on. So if we follow the process as outlined by Srila Prabhupada, and all the acharyas in the past, they've all taught the same thing. That Krishna is everything. Krishna himself has taught it. Right? So that's why he says in text 7 that always think of me in the form of Krishna. This is why you should think of me, Krishna says. At the same time, carry out your prescribed duty. So if you're thinking of me while carrying out a prescribed duty, which is generally what we end up thinking about when we're going to be dying. Because generally our prescribed duties take up most of our time, our energy, our focus, and our mental faculty. So then, if you have dedicated your activities to me, Krishna says, with your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without a doubt. He says that I guarantee you. But the project of focusing our mind and intelligence on Krishna, that is our responsibility. Krishna is there to help us, but we have to always make the conscientious and conscious choice of allowing Krishna into our hearts, into our minds, into our intelligence all the time. Therefore, it is called International Society for Krishna Consciousness, where a consciousness is always based on how to please Krishna. There was a very old man, I might have told this story before. Old man, he had a very rich old man. He owned, in India, in Bombay, he owned a tire company and he made millions of dollars, so much money from his huge industry of tires. And he was on his deathbed and he was dying, and his grandchildren were there, children were there. And he called his oldest son. His oldest son must have been like, maybe 48 or 50 years old. And he told him, come closer, because his voice was very weak. And he knew he's about to die in probably the next day or maybe even the next few hours. His voice was very weak. And he pointed to his son, come closer. The son came close. That's not close enough. Come close, because I can't speak. You bring your ear next to my mouth. I'm going to tell you something. So his son thought he was going to tell him something very, very, deep and important, right? So his son came close to his father's mouth. He put his ear there. Tell me, son, what is the price of tires today? You'd think at this point, he doesn't care for tires, but because he's so used to thinking, what is the price of tires? What is the rubber? How much profit we made? What was the last quarterly statement? How much tax did we save? This is all you're thinking about. So at the time of death, nothing different is going to come. Nothing so profound is going to change at the time of death. Don't expect that. See, he's very successful in that way, but he's a failure in how to die. He's a failure in prioritizing his life, that Krishna is important. Our relationship with God is important. Our job is not everything. It's a big part of what we do, but we have to also mold our life and our understanding of the job that we do in our career, that this is really for Krishna. Let me find a way of bringing this, using this for Krishna. Let me find a way so that when I am worried about something, it is about Krishna. When I'm concerned about where my heart is going to be, it is really, will I be Krishna conscious at the end of this day, end of this year, end of this life? If that is our concern, then we are successful. If we act on those concerns, then the success is guaranteed. Process is there. Process is very simple, very clear, and very pleasant. We just have to make an attempt to make it a habit. If it becomes a habit, it's very powerful. If we only do it once in a while, we'll enjoy it, but the power will not be there unless we make it a regular habit. Then we won't be able to live without that Krishna conscious presence in our life. So that is what Krishna is trying to guide us in understanding this. So this is Parmeshwar Prapti, attaining the Supreme, this chapter. We kind of did an overview. And Krishna, he repeats these points from different angles. Any good teacher will first make the point, then he'll go into some details, and he'll make this point while he's going through details, and at the end he'll make that point again. At least 3 times he'll make the point. That's what good teachers do, because our focus tends to be very short, our attention can be short. So good teachers tend to do that. Make the point, give the details, summarize in between also, and then at the end make the same point again. And so you'll see Krishna repeating this point from various angles, that absorb your mind, your intelligence in me. And if you think that's having another birth in heavenly, very nice, beautiful kingdoms and all that, it's not worth it, because those are temporary. And then he gave the example of even Brahma, he doesn't live for. So this is to give the perspective. Don't think there are other options. There is no other option if you want to be truly happy permanently. If you want temporary happiness, yeah, that's an option, but that's not even real happiness, So permanent happiness comes from practicing the process of Krishna consciousness as given by our Guru Varga and Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas, as given by Krishna himself. And in this Kali Yuga, because life is so difficult, the process has been simplified for us to compensate for the difficulty of Kali Yuga. That we avoid sinful activities, try to lead a clean, simple, straightforward life, and absorb ourselves in very joyful processes like eating prasadam, which is very beautiful, tasty, singing the name of the Lord, singing together, singing alone. Singing is a very beautiful way. Use instruments. Dancing. Dancing is a very joyous thing. So singing, dancing, eating prasadam, chanting, meditation. Meditation also a joyous way of soothing your heart. So it's a very joyous process. And then making friendships, laughing about different things. It was such a nice day. Everything is good. Let's talk about Krishna. Krishna's pastimes, his stories are very joyous to read about. They're very rich, and they can fill our minds and our imagination with all kinds of thoroughly entertaining realities. It's a reality that happened, but it's also very entertaining to hear that, and we can appreciate the Lord. So the process is susukham kartam avyayam. We'll hear about that in the next chapter, chapter 9. That the process is so joyful and it's so powerful. So as humans, it is a big opportunity to take up this process and mold our life around it as much as possible, as deeply as possible, and incorporate it as quickly as possible. Because we don't know when any of us are going to die. Let's take it up with all seriousness. And that's the message we'll see in chapter 8. All right? So Arjuna asked his questions, Krishna answers them technically one by one, and then he goes into the essence of the message, means at the time of death, you turn to me. But it's not just going to happen automatically or by flukes. No, it doesn't happen like nothing happens by flukes or by just luck. We have to work hard at undoing our misconceptions. We have to work. It's a little bit of work required on our part. So let's do that work and absorb ourselves and take up the process of Krishna consciousness and try to become devotees ourselves. Right? So I'll pause over here as we can have some discussion. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments?
Can I go first?
Yes, please, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Madan, Gopal, Prabhu, Dandrat Pranam. Thank you for the nice and inspiring classes. It got me thinking, when you spoke about consciousness, and especially the last point you mentioned about how we have to endeavor to undo basically our negative consciousness. And I was thinking that bhakti is a path of action, and jnana and yoga is more of a path of inaction. So when you do so much action, it is difficult for that action to really get into the consciousness. But rather, when you're meditating like the yogis and the jnanis, you can sit down and make your consciousness fixed. So how do we get that sense of duty? Even Krishna tells Arjuna, do your duty. So how do you get that sense of duty fixed into consciousness?
Yeah, very good question. Very good question. And the answer is in this chapter itself. If you look at 8:7, partial answer is there. Where Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. Yudhyacha means while you're fighting. Fighting is action. And it's not an easy action. It is an action that requires a lot of focus. When you're aiming and all kinds of things are going around you, yeah, how can I be thinking of Krishna and all this philosophy while I'm also processing that, okay, the horses have to go this way, the arrow's coming this direction, that other fellow is over there, I'm going to shoot this guy, I've got to watch out for my back also, everything, it's complicated. Same thing. I mean, our lives are nothing compared to what Arjuna had to go through in terms of his career. But still, we have similar things. We are fighting in many ways. So we are doing a lot of actions, right? So Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, all the time. Kaleshu means on all times. Mam anusmara yudhyacha. So what does anusmara mean? It's interesting. Smara means what? Smaranam means thinking, remembering Krishna. Mam anusmara yudhyacha means that anu means to follow, anugaman. Anusmara means your thinking has to become like thinking of Krishna has to follow your actions, and your actions have to be driven by your thinking process. So it's a very good question, because a lot of the times we tend to divorce the two concepts of action and meditation, action and focus of your mind. Because I'm doing this, doing one thing which is clearly not uh, Krishna. I mean, I'm working on a computer program or something, or I'm doing some clerical work, and there's no Krishna there at all. How am I supposed to think of Krishna while I'm doing this career thing? There's nothing to do with Krishna. The people around my desk and everything, they're not Krishna devotees. There's no images. So, Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha means that anything that we do, the consciousness behind it, the subconsciousness behind it. The subconsciousness is infused with one thing, the motivation. What is the motivation behind me doing that work? You see, so before we enter into that work, if we have meditated on the motivation behind that work, then that becomes part of subconscious, and that is called anusmara, where the thought follows your action and the action follows your thought. So now if I've decided this work I'm going to do, this Krishna I'm dedicated to you. If you do anything, suppose you have a very good child and you tell the child, okay, you do these 5 things, I'm watching you. Or if you do these five things very nicely, I'll be very happy. The child who is very good will understand and try to do those 5 things very nicely. And while he is doing those 5 things, that clean up your room, tidy up your books, all those 5 things, while he is doing them, he will be thinking in the back of his mind, my father will be so happy when he sees how nicely I did this. Actually, I'll do it even better than he expects. I'll exceed his expectations. And the good children tend to do that. So even while doing that, he's always thinking of how his father will smile at the end of his job. So that means he'll actually do his job even better, because his motivation is even deeper and bigger. So his thought and motivation is so infused with to see the smile on his father's face. It doesn't mean he'll do a poor job, but that work, it actually increases his affection for his father, increases his excitement to see his father at the end of the day. So that is why you can't really separate our consciousness and thought from the work. There's always a motive. If my motive for that work is selfish, or if I'm doing begrudgingly, it'll show up in the quality also. Maybe selfish work also yields very good quality, but the motive, because it's selfish, my consciousness at the end of that job will also end up strengthening my selfishness instead of strengthening my selflessness. You see, therefore, this anusmara yudhyacha is important. That what is the motivation that infuses, or that is infused with our actions? Yeah. Then, interestingly, in the next 2 lines, Krishna says, "Mayar pita mano buddhir, mam evashyasi asamshaya." So he says, when your anusmara and yudhya, your motivation or your remembrance is infused with your fighting, then you want to get into the practice of dedicating your mind and intelligence to me. That's how we do it, by doing it as an offering to the Lord. That means I'm doing this to please the Lord. Okay, and I'm doing it to please the Lord. When you keep doing that, he says, you will attain me without doubt. Mam evaishyasi, you will attain me, and guaranteed, asamshaya. So this is Krishna's guarantee that this is the process. Krishna says, I'm telling you, work you have to do, infuse it to consciousness of me, offer it to me. Now, how to offer different things that we do, that's another discussion, but it is possible. For example, if I'm in the business industry and making a lot of money, I can offer the fruits of the labor. Maybe not everything, but I offer some portion of it. To the degree I offer, to that degree my motivation is infused with Krishna, like that. Another reason I could do it is to set a good example to others that, yeah, it's possible to be a devotee and also be in business. So there are many other motivations. If the motivation is to uplift the consciousness of others towards Krishna, if it is to help Krishna conscious projects and so on, then that is how we can infuse our work, the motivation, and therefore our consciousness while working. Thank you for the good question, Govinda Prem Prabhu. I hope that sort of addresses some of it.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Ravi Prabhu.
It's good to hear from you again.
It was good.
And the question of think of Krishna in your last moments, which is what is recommended. But to get to that, isn't that an impossible condition at your time of death? As you yourself said, there's some, of course, don't know the time of death in terms of what's coming, maybe an accident or a health issue where you're suffering other things. Is it fair to make that kind of condition?
So that is a good question. And the point of, first of all, is it fair? Because if a whole life I've chanted Hare Krishna and being Krishna conscious, but at the time of death, I'm in the accident, car accident, and all I'm shouting is my driver's name. Hey, whatever driver's name is, hey, Joroge, or something, whatever your driver's name is. And that's what you end up shouting instead of Krishna's name, right? That's very unfair, unfair situation. I spent 80 years chanting Hare Krishna. And now here I am at age of 90 and I'm dying in a road crash going on the way to Mombasa, and because Joroge was the name on my tongue. Now, it's a very good question. Generally what happens, typically, at the time of death, we don't have much, as Krishna mentions, right? We discussed that. We don't have much control at that time because of the chaotic situation of what thoughts appear in our mind. However, there are many people who have had near-death experiences. Many people, thousands upon thousands. And near-death means they came very close to death. Their heart even stopped. Clinically, they were dead and then they came back. And many of them reported a very common phenomenon. They reported this idea that my life was flashing before me. You might have heard that also. If you've heard or read anything about people with near-death experiences, my life was flashing before me. It means the last 30, 40 seconds, or maybe 1 minute, or whatever time frame, it's a very short time frame. We saw images of very important points in my life. That life flashing before me is a service provided by Krishna. Free service. It's provided in HD, full color 3D imagery. Where does that come from? Which images are going to show up in that life flashing before me? That's the question. Those images are the ones that determine where I'll go in my next life. Therefore, it is not unfair. Now, we can choose which images are going to show up in that last movie that we see in our life. How? The most intense moments show up, not the pastel and less memorable moments. The most memorable moments will show up. The moments that are tied with our most intense emotions will show up. Those moments will show up when we were most excited, when we were ecstatic, when we were thrilled. Those moments are the moments also where we were in deep pain, lot of shock. Those also will show up. So, if the driving force, if you have practiced in finding excitement in Krishna consciousness, if you have practiced looking for ecstasy in our chanting, in our dancing, in the festivals of Krishna, doing some service for the Lord selflessly, and there is undoubtedly a lot of joy in that. You have felt it, and every devotee is here has felt it. That's why they continue to be devotees. Undoubtedly, that feeling is there of excitement. The eagerness of looking forward to the opening of the curtains on Janmashtami at midnight. So exciting. Those are the memories. The more we intensify our practice of Krishna consciousness, the more the image of Krishna, the name of Krishna, the thoughts of Krishna will be there in that last life flashing before me movie. Therefore, when we infuse all our work with the intention of pleasing Krishna, then Krishna reciprocates by incarnating in our mind. at that time. I'll give you one example. There was a conversation between Srila Prabhupada and one of his disciples, Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. And Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj was working on building a temple. Like we are working on this temple in New Jersey. He was working on building temple. He says, Srila Prabhupada, last 3-4 weeks, all I'm talking about is where to get steel and bricks and cement. And that's all I'm talking about. That's all I'm thinking. And if I die while thinking that, what's going to happen to me? I'll end up being a bricklayer in my next life. What's going to happen? Prabhupada said, no. Your motivation is devotional service. You're building a temple for the Lord. When you are putting all your effort in building the temple for the Lord, you're focusing on the details of doing this for God, then Krishna personally will incarnate. He says Mahaprabhu will personally incarnate in your mind at the time of your death. I guarantee it. You see. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he left the world in a very tragic car accident. It was a very difficult situation. It was not like, on a nice, soft deathbed. He actually left the world very unfortunate. But Srila Prabhupada had given his word. Mahaprabhu is personally incarnate in your mind at time of death. Prabhupada gave the promise. Prabhupada's promise never goes in vain. So similarly, if we have put in our effort, then we will not end up being born in Joroge's house or whatever that may be. No. If the effort has been there, Krishna is guaranteed. He says, Asamshayam. He says, Mam evashyasi asamshaya, without a doubt. So when Krishna is giving this sort of guarantee and we have done our part, then we don't need to worry about getting stuck in an unfair situation. It will not happen. And so we can rest assured. Krishna has given assurances in several places. And it makes sense. And Krishna is very fair. More than fair, he's merciful. He'll overlook our faults when we have some sincerity toward him. So we should not worry too much about that.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Mansi Ganga Mataji.
You saw me.
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't get my video, but I just wanted to thank a few souls who are there, like two Prakashes from Kisumu, Pundrik and G. Prakash. And Esther was there, but I think it's late she went off, and Lay also. But I told Madan Gopal I won't be there, but I came more than half. Thank you. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji, for acknowledging. Any more questions or comments or realizations?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
I just wanted some clarification from Prabhu if he's able to clarify this. On this text where it says, according to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to mind, soul, body, and senses also. So I just wanted some clarification on that sentence, what this refers to. And because we say this Atma is separate from the body, mind, and so on. So just a bit of clarification, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you. It's a good question. And this has actually caused some confusion because typically what happens when you have one word that is used in different versatile contexts, then it can lead to confusion, right? We use the word Atma also in our Indian language, Atma Samman, my self-respect, What is the Atma Samman? Well, don't you know I'm an engineer? I have some Atma Samman also. So that is not the soul. That is my identification. So Atma can just mean self without the context of the spiritual soul. So what Prabhupada is saying is that the dictionary recognizes that the word Atma is a versatile word. Versatile means it has many meanings depending on context. And there are quite a few Sanskrit words that are like that are depending on context. For even the word Bhagavan, for example, generally Bhagavan refers to Krishna, Supreme Personality Godhead. But sometimes in Bhagavatam we'll come across different other personalities who addresses Bhagavan. Even Narad Muni is called Bhagavan sometimes because he has certain opulences. So similarly, the point being made in his purport is that when Arjuna asks, what is Atma? Right? Prabhupada is explaining that there will be cases in the Vedic, and the dictionary itself affirms that the Atma can mean mind, soul, body, and senses also. That is why Arjuna is asking about it, that essentially what does Atma mean? So the primary, there's always primary meaning and then there's other meanings also. You see, the primary meaning of the word Atma refers to the soul when used in the context of spiritual discussions. But depending on other contexts, it could mean body and mind also. See? So therefore, when Krishna addresses that, he says Atma refers to who you actually are, yourself in the context. So Krishna is clarifying, Arjuna is asking for clarification of the context of the word, because that word has been used in other contexts to mean different things. That's all.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, just to elaborate on that last question. So when we die, with us, the mind and intellect and false ego goes with us. So that is what I thought it meant, that your mind and body and senses go. So I was just referring to those three as them being referred here.
Right, but you see the body is also being referred over here.
Mm-hmm.
So body doesn't go. So this is basically a clarification on semantics. The semantics meaning the meaning of the word, and how it can be used in different contexts. That's all it is. It's clarification of that.
Hare Krishna, any more questions? If there are no more questions, I have another question, Prabhuji. So at the time, at any time when you are in pain, and this is my own personal experience, I had a slip disc, and at that time, it was very difficult to concentrate on God. I mean, I was 3 months on the floor. I had nothing else to do, no phone calls or anything. But the whole concentration was on the pain. So, I mean, during death, as you said, there'll be many more anxieties, etc. So, will this practice that we do every day help us at that end point? Because personally, I wasn't, I mean, 10 years ago, I hadn't taken up Krishna consciousness. All I did was think of God. But never chanted. So is the chanting going to help us? What process we are doing now in Krishna consciousness should be strengthened so that it helps when we are in so much pain?
Yeah. That's a good question. And it is true that chanting definitely is the core process that will help us. And if you have advanced sufficiently in chanting and turning to the Lord, then we'll be able to overcome even very physically painful situations. There is a prayer by King Kulashekar. King Kulashekar was one of the Alvars of South India. And Srila Prabhupada has written a book on that, Prayers of King Kulashekar. You can look it up. He's written some purports on them. One of the verses King Kulashekar prays, he says, Krishna tvadiya pada pankaj panjarantam adyaiva me vishata manasa rajahansa prana prayana samaye kafavatta pittai kantavarodhano vida smaranam kuteste. Srila Prabhupada used to quote this a lot also. He used to sing this. It means that, my dear Lord, please allow me now, when I'm young and healthy, to absorb my mind fully. Rajahansa, the swan of my mind, let it dive into the beautiful roots of your lotus plant, of your lotus feet. Why? Because prana prayana samaye, at the time of the passing of my life heirs, prana prayana samaye kapha vata pittai kantha avarodhana vidho. So my throat will be choked up with kapha vata pitta, with the mucus, bile and air, and some rattling sound is going to come. I won't even be able to say your name. Prana prayana samaye kapha vata pittai kantha avarodhana vidho smaranam kutes. How will I even remember you? So this is King Kulashekar crying to the Lord that, my Lord, take me now. now that I'm able to focus on you. The Lord did not take him at that time, but that mood, that desperate cry to the Lord, my Lord, please make me Krishna conscious now, because the time of death is going to be really difficult. I know it. I've seen my grandfather go through it. I've seen my father's on the way there. Please help me now to be so saturated in your thought that I can override those pains and really think of you. How will I remember you when I'm worried about the slip disc and all the other pains? I had a slip disc myself and it was very painful. 10 years I suffered through it. It was very difficult, very hard to remember Krishna at that time. This is a very famous Hindi saying, दुख में सुमिरन सब करे सुख में करे ना कोई जो सुख में सुमिरन करे तो दुख काहे को होय. That, when sometimes people go through some difficulty in life, that's the time they remember Krishna. Hey Bhagwan. But when things are going nicely, they don't remember Krishna. But jo sukh mein sumiran kare to dukh kahe ko hoy. But if one is used to thinking of Krishna very deeply, even in the happy times, then dukh kahe ko hoy. Then even when they're going through some physical pain or suffering, one, it doesn't impact them that much because they realize very closely they're not the body. And second, even the emotions that are generated from those painful situations can be leveraged to think deeply of Krishna. So dukh kahe ko, there's no dukh in that point in life, even though the situation looks very dukhi, very painful. That is the beauty of proper practice of Krishna consciousness. And I'm sure you have realized that yourself now, that some things that used to bug you in 10 years ago, they don't bug you anymore so much. They're like nothing anymore, Talking about certain situations, social situations, what people care about me, talk about me, who cares? Back then it must have affected you very deeply, but now it doesn't. And this is a realization of most devotees I've seen, because the priorities shift and things that cause us pain in the past, after taking up Krishna consciousness, they don't cause that much pain. Dukh kahe ko hoy. So the more we progress in Krishna consciousness, the more we'll be able to handle the pain, because Krishna provides that ability.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I just have a question. First, the comment, your lecture has really, because I've always got worried that, says you have to remember the Lord at the time of your death. And I wonder that, when we get little pain and our mind diverts, so that has put me at ease that there will be a flashing light. So whatever you've done a lot in your life, that will come at the last moment. So hopefully Krishna will come to the assistance. But my question is, it's not directly related. Recently we had a lecture and we were told that Krishna sometimes tests you. Yeah, the more you sometimes become a devotee, he will put you in a really difficult situation to test you. And life won't be that easy. Now, personally, in my case, my problem is, as Mataji said, I also recently have been going through my sleep disc, and though I'm chanting, sometimes I would think, oh, my chanting are not so pure, I must do a couple of more. The reason is because my mind is in that pain. So just that little thing and my whole mind diverts. So how does this theory come that Krishna will, when Krishna will give you more trouble because he's a thief, but no, in a good way, he's a thief. He will steal everything from you, and he will test you. So like I find myself in peace, I can remember the Lord better than in misery. So how does that, the Kunti Maharani as well said, please give me grief, birth after birth. I'm not afraid of the grief, but I'm afraid of forgetting Krishna, because my mind will be diverted fully on that problem. So how does that tally? Just I want to question, how does this work?
Yeah. Thank you, Vishakha Mataji. And you brought up many points. You brought up the concept of Krishna tests the devotees. You brought up the concept of misery and how to process it. You brought up the concept of Queen Kunti, who asked for more miserable situations. So you brought up several very important, very complicated concepts. So I'll try to address some of them from what I've heard. This notion of Krishna testing his devotees. Why do you think he tests us?
He wants to purify us. He wants to purify us.
No. Generally, when we give a test, when we give test to our students, what is the purpose of that? The teacher wants to see where they are, right? Whether they'll pass or fail. When Krishna gives us a test, it is not for that purpose. Because Krishna knows if you're going to pass or fail, right? Why would he need to test us? Right? He doesn't need to test us to see where we are at. He knows us completely. He knows whether they're going to pass or fail. What is the point of the test? The point of these tests is to show us where we are. That's all. Show us the grade. Look, this is where you are at. So, lot of the times it is to, if we may feel some pride that I've become a big devotee, then Krishna will show us that don't think so. Okay? Remain humble. That's one possible reason why Krishna offers tests. He tested Narad Muni like that also. He made fun of him to show that don't feel proud. Okay, you're one of the greatest devotees in the world, but don't think you're an Olympic athlete. Okay, in devotion service, and he breaks the pride. So he tests everyone at different levels, and those tests have those humbling effects. That humbling effect is what makes us better, softer. Krishna likes us softer. Secondly, how are we supposed to address or view these painful episodes in our life? How are we supposed to process them? So, one very important verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is recommended to be the most important, we should tattoo this on our bodies. That's how important this verse is. It is by Lord Brahma in the prayers. It says, Tat te anukampam sasamikshamano bhunjan evatma kritam vipakam hridvag vapurbhir vidadhan namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. And this verse is very beautiful because it highlights some key importance points. Okay, if you want the reference, I can give you the reference. Let me see if I can find it. I just kind of memorized, I don't know the verse number, but it's 10:4:18. So that's the reference. Canto 10, 10:14:8. So Canto 10, chapter 14, which is the prayers of Lord Brahma, I believe, and verse number 8. Okay. So in that one, he says that a devotee who is undergoing some pain or something like that, he continues to suffer and tolerate the different pains that are coming to him or her, knowing that they are due to past karma. One point. Second point, recognizing that actually this pain I'm feeling through the slip disc, even though it's so excruciating, the Lord is being kind to me. I actually deserve to have felt 100 times more pain than this. He's only giving me this much. So this is the kindness of the Lord. Very difficult to do, by the way. It's not easy when you're going through it, because I know I've had that back pain. I went through it for some years. I remember that I was going to the city by bus, and the pain started so bad, and I got out of the bus, and the pain was so debilitating. I was holding on to a stop sign. I couldn't even take one step because my back had completely paralyzed my legs. It was that bad. And the bus ride was 1.5 hours. And it was sub-0 degree temperature outside. It was raining and the rain was freezing as it fell. I couldn't even take 2 steps. I had to call my wife to come and fetch me by car. So she drove another 1.5 hours to fetch me. I was waiting there. I managed to walk a few steps and stay in the shade. It was the most painful experience in my life. So I've had those kind of things. I know what it's like. But the thing is, I felt sad that I couldn't remember Krishna at that point. I mean, I thought, Krishna, what is this going on? But then mostly I was thinking, this is so painful. Life is miserable. What kind of world is this? That was a lost opportunity on my part. I could have recognized Krishna. It's incredible. You know, his body is meant for pain. I must have committed so many sins in this life, past life, etc. And actually, you're kind to me. You only gave me this much pain. I deserve to be squashed like a bug. But actually, you're letting me go with just a couple hours of pain. So thank you, my Lord. That is the proper angle to see it. Okay, so 1 is to recognize my karma. 2 is to recognize that Krishna is kind, is giving us less than what we deserve. And 3 is that our karmic slate is being wiped clean, you know. right? We're being washed. And sometimes when you get beaten, we're being washed. Our karma. That's why they say, "Uski dhulai kar do." Dhulai means to beat him up. Also means wash him. We're washing his sins, right? In Hindi we have that word. Uski theek se dhulai kijiye. So that is basically what's happening. We see in India they wash the clothes with a dhoka, like it looks like a bat. They're really beating the junk out of the clothes. It's painful to the clothes. So that is one angle to see it. But tatte anukampam susumikshamano punjane vat makritam vipakam. That this is makritam vipakam. Vipakam means the ripened fruit of my karma. That is what I'm eating right now. So I have to deal with it. But one who waits and tolerates the results of his fruitive activities while still hridvag vapur bhir vidadhan namaste, while still offering obeisances with hridvag and vapur, obeisances to the Lord with his heart, with his words, and with his body. If he does that while tolerating these pains and awaiting the mercy of the Lord, this is the most beautiful part. Anukampa means the mercy of the Lord. Tatte anukampa, who waits for the mercy of the Lord while suffering and tolerating the pains due to his own karma and offering obeisances, means heartfelt. Hrid, vag, the words, beautiful prayers we offer to the Lord, and vapu, we work with the body for the Lord. Jiveta yo mukte sadaya bhak, then liberation becomes his rightful claim. My Lord, I did this now. Brahma is giving the testimony. If that person does this, then liberation is his rightful. He's got his ticket now, passport, visa stamped to go to the Lord's planet. Now, the most beautiful part of this I've not explained is the word anukampa. See, the word mercy has many Sanskrit words like daya, kripa, etc. Anukampa is one of the most beautiful aspects of mercy. It comes from the word kampa, kampana. Kampana means trembling. Okay? It means kampana, I'm trembling out of pain, I'm trembling from fear, trembling of emotion. Anukampa means a form of empathy where somebody also trembles with you. Kirika Mataji, if you are trembling because you're so much in pain and your sister comes and visits you and she also starts trembling because she feels your pain. She may not have the back pain, but she loves you so much. She feels it. She also starts, she's so deeply connected with your feelings that she feels it. Krishna does that too. Krishna is very close with us. No, Krishna doesn't feel our feelings. When that level of mercy is so high that Krishna feels our feelings, he feels our pain, he cries for us, that is called anukampa. He does. He's in our heart. He's not a heartless person. He himself is in our heart. He feels our pain. He's not happy that we're going through these pains. It doesn't give him pleasure. He doesn't like it. But these are the outcomes of our choices. What he does like is when he recognizes this outcome of our choice that we made in the past. And we still recognize that I don't care what pain I have. I'm going to continue tolerating it. My Lord, I'm yours. I'm going to continue offering my body, my words, and my mind to you, my heart to you. And he waits for the Lord to also tremble with him. Then that person is eligible for becoming a member of the society of devotees in the spiritual world. That's why I like that verse very much, because it gives us very key points. It gives us how sweetly merciful the Lord is. It tells us what exactly we should be doing when we're going through the pain, what our attitude should be when we're going through the pain, and what we should continue doing as devotees. All those answers are there in that one verse. And if you make that one verse the motto of our life will be successful. So I'd recommend any devotee who's really into this subject to memorize that verse thoroughly. It's not a very long verse. Meditate on it deeply and mold our lives around that one message in the Bhagavatam. And we will learn how to process this, and we'll get better and better. It's not that all of a sudden we'll become expert devotees, no. But it is a framework in which we can measure our advancement. Vishaka Mataji, I hope that helps a little bit. It's a lot. You asked a lot of questions. I'm just addressing a little bit of them.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes, you did It's such a really good answer. It really touched me. But what I'm saying is like, yes, having realized this is my karma, I may have done something bad to somebody. That's why I'm getting that. Also, having realized that he's putting me under test to see how much I love him. All these reasons are there in your mind. Like, but when it comes to that pain and you are chanting and you want to think of the Lord in a really like, you don't want to bother. This is how my realization. I don't want to bother the Lord with my problem, but that problem is niggling you, so that chanting is not pure because you are not really loving him. You are just, your mind is going into him and then coming out, and the pain is there, then going into him, coming out, so that ecstasy is not coming. So how do we one achieve that in such a pain? How does one achieve that when they are in extreme pain, but yes, Krishna and just Krishna?
Yeah, yeah, it is. So Krishna does give the answer in Bhagavad Gita. It's a cultivation. He says, Shanai Shanai Uparamed. He says gradually, gradually, gradually. If you want to be Olympic level bodybuilder, you can't do it in 1 week. There's a process and it could take several years. Okay. Similarly, if you want to be that stage of devotee where the pain you can completely override and use it and become very deep in Krishna conscious, it is a very high goal. The fact that you recognize that goal is a huge win right from now. You recognize that this is, I'm not there yet, so that's very good. Some devotees think, oh, I'm already such a great devotee. That in itself is the end of your progress, but you have recognized that you have a long way to go. So that itself is very positive. So we can celebrate that. And Krishna gave answers. There's two things that can be done about it. That is abhyasa and vairagya. So we cultivate practice. Practice makes one perfect, and we get better with it. Shanai Shanai Uparamed means gradually. So it's a gradual cultivation. So you know the fruit is that level of advancement, but we're just now planting the seed, or the tree is only this much, right? Papaya will take some years before the papaya comes. So we know it, but we do. So we practice and we cultivate some detachment, abhyasa vairagya. It's not impossible, but it is impossible to get papaya in 3 days from a tree like this. That's impossible. But it's not impossible to follow the process and get the papaya after a couple of years or whatever. It takes time, right? So we have to follow the process of gradually advancing, while at the same time recognizing that Krishna, I'm not there yet. Please give me the strength, the wisdom to continue the process, get stronger and better, and look for opportunities to give up some things that hold us back. That is detachment. Practice and detachment. If you do it on a daily basis, regular basis, then we'll make progress. It is a lofty goal. Becoming a devotee at that level is very high. So we should just keep doing it.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Very nice answer. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, on detachment, when you get detached from various people and around you, would you not be accused of not doing your karmas properly?
That's another big misconception, which Srila Prabhupada addressed in chapter 13, verse number 8. If you go to the purport of that, you'll find a very nice answer to that misconception. Detachment does not mean negligence. Some people mistranslate that and even misapply it in their lives and choose to neglect their children, neglect their spouses. No. Detachment means giving up the idea that these people are there for me to enjoy, for me to control. They're there for me to feel good about. No. These people are here in my lives so that I can serve Krishna better, help them become more Krishna conscious, and nourish them as per my duties, do even a better job because I want them to become better people, so on and so forth. But the clear answer, very beautiful answer, you'll find in the purport to that verse, and where Krishna outlines, it says, detachment from wife, children, etc. This is an item of knowledge. I mean, this is knowledge. If you're detached from your wife, children, etc., that means you're in knowledge. It's good. And Prabhupada says what the detachment looks like. He says, if you find in the purport, and I strongly recommend all devotees to read that purport, especially that section. And during my wedding, that was conducted by a Srila Prabhupada disciple, the devotee who did the wedding, he read from that purport. He said, this is what family life is about. So I encourage everyone to read it. Chapter 13, verse number 8. And in that one, Srila Prabhupada says, if I remember, that detachment from wife, children, family, etc. does not mean that one does not have affection for them. He says these are natural objects of affection. It is important to be happy in family life. And then he gives the formula how to be happy. That formula, he says, there's 4 things if you do, you'll be happy. What are the 4 things? Chant Hare Krishna morning and evening. One thing. Read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam with family, even if it's a few minutes. 2 things. Worship the deity. Have a deity form. And 4, worship deity means do arti, small arti together. And 4, offer what we going to eat, offer to the deities. These 4 things will make family life very happy. So there's a detachment. Detachment doesn't mean that you don't have affection. He gets into that point very clearly. Affection is important, it's very natural. So people who have some negativity and then they try to misapply Krishna conscious philosophy and they think detachment should look like this, they end up doing a disservice. So it's important to read these purports very clearly, to recognize how to apply them in our lives. We should read them again and again. This is not an easy philosophy to understand because we will read it through the conditioned lenses of our own misunderstandings. So many people have read these purports, they don't know. They misapply detachment. But Prabhupada says clearly, why did you forget that part? Don't give up affection. Affection is natural. See, when we try to be unnatural, that's when a lot of problems happen. But at the same time, we need to bring in the good natural things and give up the bad natural things. Remember, doing destructive things is also natural, by the way. It's nothing unnatural. You see, when we smoke marijuana is a natural thing. It's not artificial drug. It's nature. Nature has given us. Why? See, so there is a higher nature and there's a lower nature. Let us appeal to the higher nature. Give up the lower nature. So just because something is natural doesn't mean it's good for you. So Prabhupada, someone asked Prabhupada, this is very natural, having illicit sex and all that is very natural. Said, yeah, but why are we going for these natural things? Go for the higher natural things. There are 2 natures. Both are natural paths. So find which is natural thing which takes you higher and appeal our heart to that. Move our actions and our plans to that. So same thing with affection and detachment. Appeal to the higher nature. With affection is infused with spiritual growth. Not affection infused with spoiling the children. And affection, there's also affection. It's also natural to spoil our children, letting them have everything and do everything and all that. We didn't raise them properly, but it's natural. So let's try to make it higher nature. And also some detachment means that if the children go some path, you can't force them. That also which some detachment is required. That's how they ended up being. We tried our best. Everyone has a free will. So that's a big discussion. But anyway, we are quite a bit beyond time. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Sorry for taking more of your time. Prabhuji, will you be able to close the session, please? Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Madan Gopal Prabhu, for giving us the summary of chapter 8 and basically how we can attain the Supreme. And also you talked about even going to Brahma. Brahma is also temporary. We come back here. So we want to go to the spiritual world. And also answering the questions. And you brought up quite a lot of verses, especially King Kulukshekara, the pastimes of that. And 10:14:8, yeah, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14:8. I'm sure I will go to it as well and try to revise that, go to the verse and get that verse in my mind. And you talked about the detachment and practice and with determination. And the final thing you said about to chant, read, worship, and offer whatever we eat to the Lord. That is actually the detachment. So thank you very much for the class. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure others enjoyed it as well. So can we glorify Prabhu with Maha Mantra? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare
Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram,
Ram
Ram Ram, Hare
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 Hare.
Hare. Vancha kalpa tarubhya
Kalpatarubhya
kripa
Kripa
sindhubhya eva cha
Patitanam
patitanam
Pavanebhyo
pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
vaishnavebhyo
Namo
namo.
Namaha.
His Grace Madan Gopal Prabhu ki jai.
Jai
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai
Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. We'll see you next time. Hare Bol.
Haribol. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.